Hello everybody, welcome to episode 3 of our first season sailing with Double T. Now, we've decided that we're going to make this a two-parter episode because we've got a lot of content we want to cram in. In part 1, we're going to haul out the boat for Washdown for the very first time. Unfortunately, it brings some real revelations we wanted to share. But we also want to take you sailing. So in part 2, we head out for a fantastic sail and get to spend our first night on the hook with Double T. Okay folks, so you join us from back on board Double T. We have come down this evening with the plan of, well, we've got a plan to haul out tomorrow for a washdown. Now, since we bought the boat, we've not actually taken the boat out of the water at all, so we don't know what we're going to find there. We put a camera under the water yesterday to have a look around to see, what sort of condition the hull's in. I have to say, this actually reminds me of something. Can't think what.
Bikini Bottom. Listen to the tropical tranquility.
Anyway, as expected, it's pretty grimy, but it doesn't look too horrendous. So the plan is that tomorrow morning, once we get the shout, we head over to the lift out point where the boat's going to be hauled out and literally washed and put back in the water. There's an outline plan at the moment that we might look at one of the anodes as well, changing one of the anodes, just as a precautionary thing really, but we'll see what the old one is like first, but we've got one on standby just in case. So that's the plan for the morning. In the meantime, this evening it's a case of just trying to relax and get ready for the morning. This evening is actually blowing no booze here, but tomorrow the forecast is very different. It's quite bright and sunny. So that's the plan. Well, next day, weather is pretty much as the forecast suggested, which makes a pleasant change, doesn't it? So with the line shortened, we're pretty much marking time until we get a call from the guys with the hoist. Unfortunately, it's very shallow around the area of the hoist and it's quite busy with fishing boats, etc. So it's not the sort of place you can loiter. Better to be on the berth and wait for that call. I confess, this is always the nerve-wracking bit for me, making our way off the berth. Not so much about worrying about damaging your own boat, but somebody else's always concerns me. But having said that, we're making progress, and with each trip we're getting a little bit better, more experienced. So whenever there's an opportunity to do some driving astern like this and get a feel for how the boat reacts, I always try and take it, just because it improves my skill overall. Well, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. It was at this stage that we became aware of the boat just passing across our bow right now. There is always that possibility that he's head down concentrating on something. Plus, he's actually in the area that we need to be in order to get the right line towards the hoist. Of course, my concern is that the boat ahead might continue his turn and come round and collect us. Anyway, it turns out that he was the boat that was launched from the hoist that we're aiming for, and he was simply giving everything a run in after relaunching the boat. But of course, any mariner worth their salt will tell you, you never know, so you have to err on caution. In this case, the gentleman had it well dialed in, so there was no cause for concern. Unfortunately, there's a lot of shallow water hereabouts, so you have to take it very carefully. Still, a cheery wave, and now the fun really begins as we make our way over to the hoist. Now, I've not done this before, so this should be a new experience. So the game is, I have to get Double T through those two white posts. Good game, good game. So my situation is that I have a bit of a crosswind from the left hand side, not very strong, but it's still having an effect on us. It's very important to regulate the speed carefully, because if I arrive at the hoist with too much speed on, I'll have to try and scrub that off by using reverse thrust, which, as we know, will give me that prop walk effect I'm trying to avoid. On the other hand, if I go too slowly, I lose steerage, so it's a real balancing act. You'll notice I'm positioned over to the left and now the bow is heading over to the starboard side. The reason is as soon as I pop it into reverse, you'll see the back end kick over. There you go. This essentially is me trying to account for that prop walk. Anyway, the boat's secured. And so with the final check, it's time to make ourselves scarce and hop up onto the platform. Unfortunately, engine noise makes communication a bit difficult. It has to be admitted, so far today it's been full of new experiences. Unfortunately, Milford Marina doesn't have its own washdown facility. In fact, that element has to be handled by a subcontractor. I did look at doing it myself, but there isn't even a tap available. Even the subcontractor has to bring his own water storage, so that really wasn't going to happen for me trying to DIY. So while the man with the power wash got busy, it was our opportunity to start having a look around the hull. Luckily, most of the growth seemed to be slime and mud rather than barnacles, but having said that, there were a few areas with a build-up, but that's really to be expected. This was our first opportunity to see Double T out of the water, and I have to say, she's quite an imposing sight. It's a big old boat. Our optimism was quashed very quickly when the power wash man called us over. Looking at the hull, it had a massive amount of bubbling. Now at first we hoped this might just be in the anti-fouling, but on closer examination it's actually osmotic blistering. In fact, below the waterline, the whole hull looks like it's made of bubble wrap. I think we might have bought a colander. As you can imagine, my mind is just filled with disappointment right now. But at the end of the day, it's too late to worry about it. This is definitely osmotic blistering, although most seem intact for the moment. But having said that, there is evidence of bursting. Even the rudder blade was covered in it. But nothing we can do about it now. We just have to move on and think about what we're going to do in the future. One area I was keen to get a look at was around the prop. In particular, I wanted to see the prop itself, which is the two-blade affair as you can see here, and there's hopes that maybe in the future we'll swap to a folding prop, maybe a three-blade, but that's just preclusively expensive right now. There is actually underneath all this growth a line cutter. That is if we ever find it again. The keel is also going to need some TLC very soon, I think. But keel rusting is a common problem for most people. The good news is that the seal on the hull seems to be quite sound, although there is some evidence of rusting on the forward edge, as you can see here. But again, it goes on the jobs list. Another thing I wanted to achieve while the boat was out of the water, and that was actually checking these sacrificial anodes. Now Double T has two of these, one on the hull and one on the propeller shaft. You'll notice on the hull anode it's badly corroded, but that's a good thing. It's doing its job. We'd actually scheduled maybe changing this particular anode while we were out of the water. Unfortunately, the engineer wasn't convinced that the bolts wouldn't snap. Now, if that happened, it meant that the hull would no longer be sealed, and we'd have to come ashore for at least 24 hours for it to be resealed up again. But that wasn't an option, so we left well enough alone for now. But it goes on the work list. There's a very different story when we look at the one on the prop. In fact, that looks very intact, which is a little bit worrying. Is it actually doing its job? So that's definitely something we're going to have to keep an eye on. The line cutter seems to have cleaned up nicely, but I think that's something that needs to go on the service list as well. So, it's all aboard again and back into the water we go. Except in extreme emergencies, haul out in Milford Marina depends very much on water levels, so they can only do it so many times a month. Which means that at certain times of the year, there's a bit of a waiting list to get in or out of the water. I've got to say, it's a very strange experience going back into the water like this. And I was amazed at how many rocks were underneath the water around us. Scary stuff. As we make our way back to the berth, I'd be lying if I didn't say my head isn't filled with some degree of disappointment, especially the image of that hull looking like bubble wrap. But it's too late to worry about it now. We have to chalk it down to experience, take what we can, and come up with a plan of what we're going to do about that in the future. If anything, we'll see. Anyway, a bit of a disappointing day, really, to be honest with you folks. We were seriously hoping that it would have been just a case of haul out, wash, and put back. I mean, we wanted to have a look at the hull and things like that because as yet we've not even seen the hull before. So I have to say that initially my thoughts were when the guy flagged with us that there was some bubbling. We hoped that it was just going to be in the anti-fouling. We've seen that before. But no, it wasn't. It was actually, it is osmotic blistering, and as you saw, the hull is pretty much like bubble wrap. I'm reminded that people say that no boat ever sunk through osmosis, but I don't really want to test that theory. In the meantime, I'm sort of going to do a little bit of digging and find out, how much it would cost for us to actually get the osmosis looked at professionally. I've got a feeling it'll be like telephone numbers, but we'll have a look. If not, the sort of reserve plan really is that we'll just carry on using the boat through the season and look to what we might do in the future. But as I say, it's the price we pay. Unfortunately, when we bought Double T, we were that high on the budget just buying the boat that it was literally a choice of we buy the boat or we have the survey. We couldn't have both. There just wasn't the budget for it. So we took a choice really, and if you like, took a flyer. Yeah, okay. So in this instance, we've learned a harsh lesson, but it's not the end of the world, and I don't think that'll ultimately, as far as we're concerned, affect our use of the boat. The only thing it really affects is the resale value in the future. So yeah, it's a pain, but unfortunately, the Westerly mark has got a reputation for some boats having it, and yet others within the range don't. So it's just luck of the draw. Hey ho. Well, moving on from the disappointment, we've decided we're going to come out of the water later this season. Not so much to have a go at the Osmosis right now, but more to do with cheering up the hull. We've also got a program of improvements we want to do with some of the electronics on board and install diesel heating, etc. So those should be interesting projects, and I hope you'll join us for those. In the meantime, getting on with this season, we need to look forward to getting out and doing some sailing. Coming up in part 2, we get out at last to enjoy a fantastic sail on Double T and really put her through her paces. And we find out that she's actually so well balanced that she'll practically sail herself. For the last half an hour or thereabouts, I've not touched the wheel. And we've just got the sails balanced quite nicely at about sort of 3/4 of the head sail and full main. And she's just balanced quite nicely. But more importantly, we get to spend our first night on the hook with Double T. Just look at this for an anchorage. It doesn't get any better than this. See you next time.